You were never meant to own your wealth. From the moment you were born, the system was designed so you could only rent it. You rent it from the bank when you deposit your savings. You rent it from Wall Street when you hand them your retirement fund. And you rent it from governments when you keep your wealth tied to fiat currency that loses value every single day. And here's the harsh truth. Wealth was never about numbers on a screen. It was about control. Control over your time, your future, and your ability to say no. But here's the paradox. For centuries, only the ultra-wealthy had access to true control. They built sovereign wealth funds, family trusts, offshore accounts, tools designed not to grow wealth fast, but to preserve it forever. But now, for the first time in history, you don't need to be a billionaire to play that game, because Bitcoin has turned 0.01 worth of Bitcoin, just a tiny slice of 21 million, into the sovereign wealth fund of the digital age. And if you understand what that means, you'll never see money the same way again. See, most people think wealth comes from growth. They obsess over the stock market, index funds, beating inflation, or with side hustles or higher salaries. But the rich don't play that game. They play defense. They don't chase every investment. They protect what they already have. And that's why sovereign wealth funds exist. Norway, for example, runs the largest in the world, a $1.6 trillion pool designed to make sure future generations of Norwegians will always benefit from the country's oil wealth. Now that's how billionaires think, not in quarters, not in years, but in generations. And here's the flip most people miss. 0.01 worth of Bitcoin can be your own sovereign wealth fund. Now, not because it will make you a millionaire overnight, but because it locks in your claim on the scarcest monetary network humanity has ever seen. And that's the point. Sovereignty, preservation, ownership that no one can take. See, right now, sovereign wealth funds and hedge funds play by fiat rules. They hold trillions in stocks, bonds, real estate, and all dominated in currencies that governments can inflate at will. But Bitcoin changes the base layer of wealth. It introduces something new, property you can't seize, dilute, or counterfeit. There will only ever be 21 million Bitcoin, and that's it. Now divide that across 8 billion people, and the math gets ridiculous. And even 0.01 worth of Bitcoin places you ahead of the majority of the world, not just today, but forever. Now that's not a lottery ticket, that's digital real estate, and that's your slice of a fixed supply. And if more sovereign wealth funds eventually wake up and allocate even a fraction of their capital into Bitcoin, the supply shock will make today's small holdings imaginably significant. And that's why 0.01 matters. It's not a small number, it's a sovereign position. So, what does it actually mean to treat 0.01 worth of Bitcoin as your sovereign wealth fund? Well, think of it this way. In the fiat system, you store wealth in 3 main places: a savings account, the stock market, or real estate. But all 3 comes with hidden risks. Savings accounts bleed from inflation. Stocks are manipulated by central bank policy, and real estate is tied to taxes, debt, and political cycles. But with Bitcoin, you remove those dependencies. You hold an asset outside the system, enforced by math, stored by energy, and secured by encryption. So your 0.01 worth of Bitcoin is not in a bank's ledger. It's in your wallet, and it's not subject to dilution because it's fixed, and It's portable anywhere and any time. So in practical terms, that means you can preserve wealth across generations without needing lawyers, trusts, or shell corporations. You can move wealth across borders with nothing more than 12 words in your head. And you can store value without asking for permission, without counterparty risk, and without dependency. Now that's not theory, that's infrastructure. See, think about the ultra-wealthy for a moment. You've always known the game was rigged. Why do you think the Rockefellers built trusts? Why do you think the Saudi royal family created sovereign wealth funds? And why do you think every billionaire has an offshore structure in the Cayman Islands, Switzerland, or Singapore? Now, it wasn't because they wanted to evade responsibility, it was because they understood fragility. They knew fiat was fragile. They knew governments always spend too much, print too much, and collapse under their own weight. And they weren't willing to let their family's legacy disappear with the next crisis. So for the first time in history, you don't need an army of lawyers and bankers to play that game, because Bitcoin is the sovereign wealth fund for the individual, and 0.01 worth of Bitcoin is your family trust. It's your offshore account. It's your vault in Zurich, without the fees, without the friction, and without gatekeepers. And you can build it with nothing more than a phone, a wallet, and conviction. So when you own 0.01 worth of Bitcoin, you stop thinking like a consumer. You stop thinking in terms of how much can I make this year and start thinking in terms of what will survive the next 50 years. Now that's the sovereign wealth fund mindset. It's not about chasing growth, it's about anchoring yourself in truth. Because fiat teaches you to live in constant motion. Always chasing, always hedging, always afraid of falling behind. But Bitcoin teaches you to stand still, to hold, to let scarcity do the heavy lifting while you focus on building your life. And that's the real gift of 0.01 worth of Bitcoin. It's not financial hype, it's psychological sovereignty. So let's zoom out for a second. Right now, we're witnessing the largest wealth transfer in human history. Trillions are moving from fiat savers to hard asset holders, from inflation victims to inflation hedgers, and from those who trust the system to those who opt out of it. Now, institutions are beginning to step in as well. Pension funds, hedge funds, even governments are buying Bitcoin. So what happens when the demand collides with a cap of 21 million? Well, scarcity compounds, because price isn't the story, purchasing power and sovereignty are. And that's why 0.01 worth of Bitcoin matters, because in a world of 8 billion people, owning even a fraction of Bitcoin puts you in a position of advantage most won't realise until it's too late. So let's be clear, 0.01 worth of Bitcoin isn't about getting rich. It's about playing the same game the ultra-wealthy have always played, but without needing their resources, their lawyers, or their access. And it's about creating a personal sovereign wealth fund that cannot be seized, diluted, or defaulted on. And if history has taught us anything, it's that wealth isn't about working harder, earning more, or even investing smarter. It's about positioning yourself in assets that outlast empires. See, for thousands of years, that was land. For hundreds of years, that was gold. And today, well, today it's Bitcoin. And tomorrow, the people who saw this early will be the new sovereign class. So the question isn't whether sovereign wealth funds will eventually hold Bitcoin. They will. In fact, some already are. But the question is whether you'd build yours before it becomes unbuyable. Because 0.01 worth of Bitcoin today is more than a balance in a wallet. It's a claim on the future. is an inheritance in waiting, and it's proof that you saw through the illusion before most of the world did. So ask yourself, will you let your future depend on the same fragile system that has failed generations before you, or will you build your own sovereign wealth fund starting with 0.01 worth of Bitcoin? Because once you hold it, and that means truly hold it, you'll never see wealth the same way again. Now, if you want to go deeper down the Bitcoin rabbit hole, then check out my ebook down below, because it's the wake-up call they never wanted you to read. Now, I do also have to chuck this disclaimer in here as well, and I highly suggest just pausing the video and having a little read. Now, if you've made it this far, and if you're looking for something else to watch, then click right here and have a watch of this.